Good evening and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom, coming to you live from the Maidan Square right in the heart of Kiev in Ukraine. The Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, will be over here after a couple of hours. I believe he's already started his journey from Poland to Kiev. It's an important visit of the Prime Minister. The reason I'm standing where I am now and bringing you these reports is because every single flag behind me marks the loss of a Ukrainian soldier in combat. And I'm going to pan my camera to give you an idea of the extent of the loss. Everywhere that you can see in Maidan Square, you can see the Ukrainian flags, and there are so many marking the loss of lives. Tens of thousands of people have been lost in this conflict. These are the losses just of soldiers alone. In many cases, soldiers who trained to fight just with very elementary training, because as far as they were concerned, one way or the other, what they needed to do was pick up a weapon and fight for their country. The territorial sanctity of Ukraine was absolutely immense. But there's been a lot of loss of life on the Russian side as well. On both sides, tens of thousands of lives, as I mentioned, and these are grossly understated numbers because the exact numbers have never been publicly disclosed, never been thought to be accurate at all. Where does India come into the picture? India comes into the picture because the visit of the Prime Minister over here is the visit of a leader who's got political capital both in Moscow, where he was a couple of weeks back, and also over here. He is coming to Ukraine, to Kiev, at the invitation of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He was in Moscow on the invitation of Vladimir Putin. Therefore, will there be any out-of-the-box solution? Will there be something significant that India can offer to try and bring an end to this conflict, which has devastated both countries, the entire region, and the economy far and wide across Europe? I'll be joined by a very special panel of guests in a little while from now. But earlier today, the Prime Minister was in Warsaw. India and Poland have really stepped up that relationship. The first visit of a Prime Minister of India to Poland in 45 years. The Prime Minister spoke about the need to end the war, that this cannot be an era of war. Important remarks. Let's listen in.
भारत हमेशा फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्डर के रूप में सामने आता है। साथियों, भारत बुद्ध की विरासत वाली धरती है। और जब बुद्ध की बात आती है तो जो युद्ध नहीं, शांति पर विश्वास करती है। और इसलिए भारत इस रीजन में भी स्थायी शांति का एक बड़ा पैरोकार है। भारत का मत एकदम साफ है। ये युद्ध का युग नहीं है।
All right, the Prime Minister speaking in Warsaw earlier in the day, but let's talk about this part of his visit, the visit to Ukraine. Joining us now, Maria Tomak. She's part of the mission of the President of Ukraine in Crimea, a Ukrainian human rights activist, also a journalist. Irina Sukerman, national security attorney and analyst. Akhilendra Bahadur Mala, the head of production at the Kusum Group of companies. This is a remarkable pharmaceutical company which accounts for approximately 40% of the sales of all Indian medicines, pharma products over here in Ukraine. They've been continuing to function throughout the course of the war. And Ambassador S.T. Devre, the former Indian ambassador to Ukraine, thank you all very much for being with us. Maria Tomak, let me come to you first. Are you hopeful that the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Kiev might actually achieve something towards bringing an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. And obviously, I won't be the first probably who would emphasize how important this visit is, and in terms of, in general, Ukrainian-Indian relationships. But speaking of the war, the ongoing Russian aggression against Ukraine, I would like to remind about the peace formula suggested by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. And of course, we would really appreciate the support of the peace formula by Prime Minister Modi, because from our standpoint, this is the only way to end the war, actually, is to restore Ukrainian territorial integrity, including the Crimean Peninsula, which is the main area of my expertise and of my work today. So it's really important to say that this is the way to end the war. It's not the compromises of the territorial integrity, but the restoring of Ukrainian territorial integrity, including Crimean Peninsula, where our citizens live, indigenous peoples of Ukraine, Crimean Tatar people, and they cannot live peacefully under the Russian occupation. So that's a very important thing. But we understand also that one visit cannot solve all the issues. And I would like to mention about the issue of political prisoners and civilian hostages that are held by Russia. And it would be great, and it would be a great contribution if maybe India could play a role in helping Ukraine to release these people. This is under the fourth, again, point of the President Zelensky peace formula. And even this small intervention at the level of on the great level of saving people's lives would be a great contribution India to actually restoring the peace, which is a part of the peace formula as well. Thank you.
In fact, that's an interesting proposal, and I wanted to go across to Irina Sukaman. Irina, do you believe that that is something which is realistically achievable? Just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen hundreds, perhaps several hundred prisoners of war from Russia in Ukrainian hands at this stage. And the other opposite side of this also remains true in terms of Ukrainian POWs in Russian hands. Do you believe that a swap of prisoners can be facilitated by India?
Thank you so much. Yes, I think this is exactly the sort of limited pragmatic step where India could play a role. It is humanitarian in nature. It is not it could be considered not a political step, and most importantly, India has the sort of leverage with Russia that could make it an effective interlocutor. It has a long historic relationship. It has logistical, business, and economic ties, as well as defense ties. But what's most important, the tables are starting to turn, where in the past India was quite dependent on Russia for its economy, on political level, on defense level. Now India is becoming more of an independent and global actor. It's developing its own defense industry, and it's starting. The tables are starting to turn in the sense that Russia is becoming increasingly dependent on India in terms of having an outlet for overcoming sanctions, for having a market outside the West.
Sure.
And this is where I think Prime Minister Modi can play a role.
Absolutely.
And use that leverage.
Just hold that thought, Irina, for half a moment. I just wanted to, go across to Ambassador Devre, who's been India's envoy to Kiev. Ambassador, again, in terms of a pragmatic solution, the fact that the Ukraine has gone into the Kursk region, the first time that we've seen, Russian territory, there's an intrusion into Russian territory, the Ukrainians controlling sizable territory over there. On the other hand, you see a lot of Russian gains in the eastern part of this country. Do you believe that there could be some sort of solution if there is a territory swap, which is perhaps the first big step towards ending this war?
Well, I believe that the Ukrainians going into Russia near the Kursk region and occupying nearly 1,200 square kilometers of land can be a very useful bargaining chip when the negotiations towards ceasefire start. Perhaps that may be the purpose in the offensive which President Zelensky took. I think day before yesterday's bombing with drones also another factor which will be a kind of a psychological pressure on the Russians. So with the Ukrainians losing something like 18% of their territory in Donbass, and now Russians also losing I think a stage is gradually being created for some kind of negotiations. I think the US election and the uncertainty about their response to this whole war could also be another factor in this. And therefore, I think this is the right time for Prime Minister. It's a very bold initiative on part of India. I think we have been consistent because Prime Minister has always emphasized sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. Also, we have repeatedly said that dialogue and diplomacy should be the avenues for finding a solution to this problem.
Sure.
So we have to be consistent, I think. If we
And
do
let's
this
hope
with
that does indeed. Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah.
We have. I just wanted to go across to Akhilendra Bahadur Mal, who's actually in the Sumy region of this country. That's to the north. In fact, it's a little to the north of Sumy that the incursions into the Kursk region have taken place. Akhilendra, your company continues to manufacture and sell pharma products throughout the war. How difficult has it been operating and living in Sumy? That's one of the areas which has constantly been under attack.
Good evening. Namaste. First of all, I would like to introduce about myself. Myself, Akhilendra Bahadur Mal. I'm working here from last 16 years. And I'm here also stay during the war starting time. That time I was lived here together with my family and 2.5 years, my small child. And I seen here that very worst situation when our city was occupied by the Russian army. And that times want to share some moment. Really, that was is a very nice moment. That when our city was occupied by the Russians, that time everyone was panic, and here was the shortage of the products, medicine, and everything. In that times, all the people start to communicate with each other and helping to each other. Also, our company provided too much help regarding medicines and something else. Also, in Sumy city, we are having around 750 students, and we are helping to them also. And also, we are helping to education and everything. And when I will come back here, then after that, yes, situation is little bit changed, but we are facing too much challenges. I would like to tell you about the first challenge we are facing about the air alarm. We are facing continuous air alarm, but in our factory we have the settlers, bombing settlers, and when air alarms is coming, that times our all the employee going in the bombing settler, and when that alarms is off, then we are working here. And also, second things we are facing regarding the psychological and moral effect on the our employee, because all the employees, someone have them husband, son, and relatives in the army, so they are psychologically too much disturbed. In that case, we are just sharing this all the emotion together.
Yep.
We are like to go outside, meet together, and just make comfortable to each other. In fact, I want to tell about myself. Why I'm here, because
No,
when
and I
you
think
come,
that's important, just in terms of the quality of living in Ukraine now and the challenges that you face. I take those points, but since I'm running short on time, I wanted to go across to Maria. Maria, since you do, in a sense, fight for the freedom of Crimea, occupied Crimea, it used to be a part of Ukraine till about 2014 or so. Could you tell us a little bit about the changing situation in the Black Sea? Because the Russian Navy has now entirely been pushed back into port as a result of maritime drones being used by Ukraine. So the situation geostrategically in the Black Sea region, which includes Crimea, has changed dramatically to the favor or in favor of Ukraine.
Thank you. That's a very important question. Just one note, I would like just appreciate a lot the position of those Indian citizens, Indian people who stay in Ukraine in this challenging time. Thank you so much for that. As for your question, indeed, the situation in the Black Sea is changing. First of all, I would like to remind that Crimea was occupied back in 2014. That's the starting point of the Russian aggression, actually, and it's important to remind about that. And since that time, Russia militarized the Crimean Peninsula, it turned the peninsula into its military base, and it attacked Ukraine in 2022, also from Crimea and from the occupied eastern regions from Ukraine. But now we can see the situation dramatically changes, because Ukrainian armed forces managed to be really efficient by applying the warfare in the territory of Crimea and in the territorial waters around Crimea. And of course, it's very important for Ukraine because Russia had to withdraw its Black Sea fleet from the Crimean peninsula, but it is also important for the worldwide, like countries worldwide, because it allowed Ukraine to renew its export of the grains to many countries, including, by the way, Southeast Asia, to African countries, also to Middle East, etc., etc. So it's really important not only for Ukraine. That's why we say that Crimea is important, it's not just a piece of land. It's also about the security for Ukraine, which cannot be restored if Crimea is occupied, and anyone looking at the map can realize it. But also it's about the global security, including food security, including energy security, and in general, the security. So it's important that we have this success. And what is also very important, and it might be interesting for Indian audience, who is the democracy, and it's very important that it makes the success of Ukrainian army in the Black Sea makes people in Crimea, our citizens, to protest against the occupation. And we've been witnessing at least 1,000 of cases when people were protesting against the occupation after 10 years of the Russian rule in Crimea.
Sure. Irina, let me come across to you next. The entire process of peace can be based on many formulas and many variations of that. Ukraine has had a peace formula for a long time now. Obviously, nothing has been acted upon. But do you believe that Ukraine also needs to soften its position? That you're not going to end up getting everything that you seek? And that ultimately the loss of life can only be reduced or can only end if both Russia and Ukraine are willing to achieve some sort of, or agree upon some sort of consensus?
I very much believe in President Reagan's vision of peace through strength. And I think Ukraine is very much moving in that direction. It is showing that it is capable of not only defending its own interests, but providing a strong pushback and addressing the weaknesses of Russia's military shortcomings. I think it's not going to be something that's resolved overnight or quickly for many reasons, political, military, and so forth. But I do think that Ukraine has shown very good faith in attempting to bring the conflict to a close. And I don't think, and Ukraine was not the country that started this war. In terms of possible diplomatic solutions, I think that this situation, as terrible as it is in terms of loss of human life and the impact on the global community, is also currently opening up an opportunity for India and Ukraine cooperation. And I think the more there is this cooperation of that sort, the more it's likely that there is going to be a broader pressure to put a conflict to an end. Due to these relationships building up, Ukraine and India, besides this, the conflict itself, have areas of long-term cooperation that I think are only starting out. And we are talking about economy, both in terms of grain and in terms of energy and natural resources. We're also talking about issues of sovereignty. India, like Ukraine, has faced issues of separatism and foreign meddling by malicious actors. And I think this is where we can see an independent long-term cooperation. And I think this is the sort of relationship building that will help put the pressure to bring the conflict to a close.
Absolutely. And right, and I'm interrupting because just the last quick question, but we've got a space special interview coming up to Ambassador Devere. Ambassador, a little word on Indian foreign policy over here. We don't use the word non-aligned anymore. We use the word independent. But the fact that Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, was in Moscow a few weeks back, he's here now at the invitation of President Zelensky. He will be arriving in Kiev in a few hours. What does that actually say about how India is today recognized and respected as a foreign power?
Well, we don't use the word non-alignment, but I think it is very much a continuation of our non-alignment policy. We have excellent relations with Russia. and we have good relations with Ukraine also. And this visit will further strengthen the relationship between India and Ukraine. We call it by different nomenclature. We call it strategic autonomy, I think, perhaps also. And therefore, what Prime Minister Modi is doing today is really an excellent example of following that strategic autonomy or the non-alignment. And he said very explicitly to President Putin that this is not an era of war or solutions cannot be found on the battlefront. I think it was a very bold statement in Moscow. And I'm sure, as he said before he left for Poland and Ukraine, that he is going to share perspectives of peaceful resolution with President Zelensky. I don't know what kind of ideas he has. Ukraine
And let us see
has
what
had
finally emerges tomorrow if there is a joint statement. But
yes.
Ambassador, I'm interrupting you now because we've got a very special interview coming up with Rajiv Gupta. He is, in fact, the head of the company I was referring to earlier on, Kusum Pharma. He came to this country with very little money in his pocket, the son of a teacher. But what he's been able to do in terms of the pharma industry over here is a real example of Indian entrepreneurship. But before we go across to that, for one last time this evening, let me just pan the camera a little bit and again tell you why we are here. This is the Maidan Square, very much in the heart of Kiev, and every single flag of Ukraine that you see behind me marks the loss of one Ukrainian soldier. And there are tens of thousands of these behind me. The numbers are countless. The loss of life is staggering. I was reporting from this area 2 years ago, and there were just a couple of flags at that stage. But today, coming back over here, reporting from the same area, and to bring you these images is just a reminder of how a war which has now gone on for 900 plus days has had a horrific impact. It's one of the most incredible examples of Indian entrepreneurship anywhere perhaps in the world. More than 3 decades back, a young Indian, Rajiv Gupta, came to Ukraine with what about a couple of $100 in his pocket. He now runs one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in this country. 40% of all Indian pharmaceuticals sold in Ukraine come from Kusum Enterprises, from Kusum Pharma, and he joins us over here. $200 is all that you came with, right?
Yeah, that was a big money for that time.
It's still big money now, but that said, you now employ 1,000 odd people in this country, and you continue to operate despite the war. How difficult has it been?
It was a bit difficult initially, but if you see the courage of local people, you feel like, no, you can continue. Why not?
And you employ how many people over here?
1,100.
And what are the drugs that you sell over here, that you manufacture over here?
So
You sell?
Yeah, we are having 2 plants in India and 1 plant situated in city Sumy, which is 23 kilometers from the Russian border, currently at epicenter. We produce tablets, a different kind of tablets, syrups, capsules, granules, ointments, cream, wide range of products.
Yeah. How difficult has it been throughout this entire war period?
First few weeks was very, very tough because nobody understands what is going on.
Yeah.
Later, you start understanding the game, how it will going to work. So, Sumy was under occupation. We closed down our operations for 2 weeks, mostly busy with the evacuation of students stuck in city Sumy. And maybe by 6th or 7th of March, we start our operations once again, even during the occupation.
Yeah. And throughout this period, you would have lost your friends. You would have seen people lose family members. It's now 900 days into the war and it doesn't seem to end. It must be saddening you a great deal because in as much as you are a proud Indian, you are also a proud Ukrainian.
Yeah, this is so unfortunate that because of ego of 1 or 2 person, so many people are dying.
Yeah.
This money can see the issue is other than casualties, the economy.
Yeah.
This money can be used for healthcare. This money can be used for education, infrastructure. By this money, you can improve the quality of life of common man.
Yeah.
This is more important, I think, than any war.
You were telling me something quite pertinent, the impact of sanctions
Yeah.
on business. For the layperson, how has that impacted, for example, you?
I think for the layman, it's not so much impact. But if frankly speaking, we are having few companies, and one of my company before the war, one of my partner was from Ukraine, but with Russian passport. So our account got freeze, but after too many interrogations, my account was defreezed. It caused little bit of harassment, kind of mental. Still, court is doing the proceedings. Hope for the justice. I believe in anti-corruption court of Ukraine, and hope that verdict will be in our favor. Otherwise, this will be a very, very bad message to all investors, not only from India, but from the worldwide.
Yeah.
Investment, see, sanctions, if you implement in a wrong way, it gives a wrong message. It's a very dangerous tool.
We've seen the Indian community over here, by which I mean students, of course, leave en masse a couple of years back. You helped out in that process. There's a small Indian community in Kiev as well, right? Did they all stay behind or have they all gone back?
I think maybe up to 10 families left behind it.
And how many families were there earlier?
More than 500 people.
Yeah.
But currently, I think maybe up to 20 people are living in Ukraine. It's a bit, you have to get used to sirens, air attacks, alerts,
What does that feel like? Because I'm coming over here after 2 years, and the first thing I heard as we drove into, as our train came into Kiev, was an air raid siren. The train stopped for a few moments, then carried on going. And then I heard it again today. And I remember what it was like 2 years back. That's not changed. It's become worse in a sense.
You're getting used to it. Like Vishnu, if you start from the yesterday evening till now, 69 drone attacks was taking place. Kiev is a bit safer city. I think one of the most safest city as far as warfare is concerned. So many anti-missile systems are in place. Still chances of success is fall down of this missiles or drones is 90%. Still 10% there is a chance. So 20 drones tried to come and attack the Kiev yesterday night, but I think most of them got down behind the border of city Kiev.
Where do you see this battle going? India, for example, has been calling for a negotiated settlement. Do you believe that is the only way? Because ultimately the fighting is not achieving very much, neither for Ukraine nor for Russia.
It's difficult to answer this question, but some compromise is always required to end the war. War cannot continue with this,
Yeah. We have our Prime Minister coming into Ukraine as well. Do you believe some out-of-the-box solutions are welcome, are important? Are you hopeful of something like that happening?
Let's hope for the best. I cannot say anything, about this. This is really difficult time,
Yeah.
So let's hope that something will come out of this visit.
Right. It's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much indeed. There you have it, Rajiv Gupta, an entrepreneur over here for so many decades, doing incredible work in the pharma industry. These medicines go to save lives at a time when routes into and out of Ukraine are so very difficult, even within the country, to ensure that basic medicines reach the right people. It's saving lives in a very direct way. Thanks very much.
Thank you
for speaking to us. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you.